Reawakening. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and it's beginning to sound a lot like a new episode of Reawakening, the dream interpretation and life coaching podcast with Yvonne Ryba. I am your host, Chris Mann. And with Christmas just around the corner, I've been thinking about prophetic dreams, the prophetic dreams from the Bible, wherein God spoke to people and revealed the way to go. Certainly, prophetic dreams have continued since biblical times. Is there a connection? Is God still speaking to us? Is there a great spirit that is still guiding us through our dreams to pursue the right path, to do the right thing, to follow our heart and our destiny? Do our dreams have that spiritual significance and meaning to them? It's a question for the ages, and it's also a question for Yvonne Ryba, our dream interpreter. Check out her website at YvonneRyba.com, YvonneRyba.com. And now let's reconnect with Yvonne and hear what she has to say about prophetic dreams. Hi again, Yvonne. How are you?
Hey, Chris. Well, I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, obviously Christmas is coming up soon, the holiday season, and I recently saw the movie Noah, which is incredible. And of course, he had the dream to build the ark. And it made me think about the long history of stories of God or Spirit speaking to people. And I believe that still happens today. So kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that from biblical times to now. And do you have an example of something that's sort of prophetic?
Oh, yes, very much so. You know, years and years ago, we were living in Utah, my first husband and I, and I wrote some articles for the local newspaper there about dreams from the Bible.
Oh, cool.
Believe it or not, yes. And of course, I come from England, and in England our education includes religious knowledge, so we do read the Bible, so I know quite a lot about dreams from the Bible. And dreams are often sent to warn about something, or to give you a message, or to change the direction of your life, or whatever, you know, which is what they do in real life. I mean, in our lives, I mean, the same thing. It all applies. And I know a dream that my first husband had that was a warning dream that's very similar to a dream from the Bible.
Oh.
So do you want me to do that one?
Please.
And it ties in with Christmas, Chris.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, because it's a dream that Joseph had when Jesus was born. And remember, the 3 wise men came.
Sure.
And they were looking for the king that had been born. And they went to the king of that time, which was Herod, of course, and he wasn't a very good chap. You know, it comes down in history as being a pretty bad person altogether.
Yeah.
So they go to him and they tell him they're looking for this child, and he doesn't know anything about it, but he says to himself, like, well, I'm going to find out about who this supposedly king is. And they go off and they eventually find Jesus.
Great.
Now, after that story, the 3 wise men have a dream that tells them not to go back to see Herod. Do not go back and see Herod. So they go back a different way to their country.
Oh, wow.
That's the first part of the story. So that's number one. Now, number two is Joseph had a dream in which he is told that he has to take his wife, take the mother and the child, and go into Egypt, you know, because there is danger here. And, of course, we know that after that, Herod decides, well, he's going to kill all the boy children under a certain age to make sure none of them are going to be, you know, this opponent, this king that is reputedly being born. So Jesus is safe in Egypt by that time. So I think in the Bible, if you hold on a sec, I will find it for you, because this is a wonderful example which is operating today in our dreams. This is not something that just happens in the Bible. It happens all the time. And here, this is what it says. And so when they had departed, and that means the 3 wise men, when they'd gone off and they weren't going by Herod, an angel of the Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And then, of course, Joseph does exactly that. In fact, when you think about it, Jesus had a very different life from the normal Hebrew child, that he was taken off into foreign countries. And we don't know much about him till he got to be 30. And then in between, he must have done quite a lot of traveling. So, he had a different viewpoint from the average guy that was alive at that time.
Sure.
So that's the dream. That was a warning to save Joseph's family, really. I mean, that would have been a terrible thing. My first husband, whose name was Temperley, had a dream that was a warning. And I was awake one Sunday morning, just beautiful Sunday morning. We lived in Utah. You know, I told you I did dream work there, and I was on television there as well, talking about dreams.
Right.
So this Sunday morning, I wake up. It's a lovely sunny day. I'm just watching the sunlight and thinking about what I'm going to do, and so on and so on. And my husband's asleep beside me, and suddenly he jumps out of bed, and he said, "There are men in the house. There are men in the house." And he ran round the bedroom, out of the door to the house, and went to the house. And I thought, what the heaven's the matter with him?
Right.
So he comes back, and he looked very puzzled, and he said, 3 men ran into the room, 3 soldiers. I said, nobody ran into this room. I can tell you right now. I said, I was awake before you, and there was no noise, no men, no knocking, nothing, all right, to give you the shock, you know, that you had. He said, no. He said, 3 men ran into the room. They ran up to me, and I'm in bed. They were in uniform, typical modern sort of soldier uniform, but they had on hats from, like, Napoleonic times with a tri-corner hat. The 3 corners to them. For some reason, they had this thing on. And I can tell you why about that in a minute. That was something that was in his dream dictionary. So they said, you must leave immediately. Do not be alarmed. He said, you must leave immediately.
Wow. So it was very palpable to him.
Absolutely. And he was shocked. He'd never done this before, Chris. I was with him for 34 years before he died. And never had he jumped out of bed and run around the house before. Like that. That was a one-off. No other time has that ever happened. He had very interesting dreams and so on, but that was a very startling thing.
Yeah.
So I said to him, I said, now look, there was no men. I know you feel like they must have been here and I didn't notice, but they didn't come. There was no men. But this is your subconscious. You've been given a warning. Now I'm saying subconscious, but I honestly believe the spiritual part here is that we are given direction. Mm-hmm. It can be a warning. It doesn't have to be, but it can be a direction to change course and not go that way, but go this way for your own improvement, betterment, success, whatever it is that's coming. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I said, well, it looks like we should be ready to leave. I said, I don't think we have to leave immediately. I said, if it's going to be something like, a volcano erupting or an earthquake or whatever the heck, I said, we'll probably have a bit of warning, but everybody will be in on it, not just us. This seems to be personal, so we should be prepared. So we talked about it, but that was about it.
Yeah.
So life returns to normal, and I wrote the dream down. Mm-hmm. And it was in 1995, and we moved from there about 2 months or so after that. But before that, a week or so after that dream, he got a phone call. And this call was from a contractor that was doing a big, big house in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Overland Park, which is like the Beverly Hills part of Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And it was a 30,000 square foot house that was being built by a multimillionaire. And Gary's painting contracting business was doing the painting. But he was asked to do some special effects that, of course, he couldn't do with gold leaf. Gold leaf is very, very fine gold, beaten down to a thickness of a hair.
Right.
Very difficult to handle and very easy to muck up and very expensive. So you've got to have somebody who knows what they're doing. And my husband he was trained in England and had done an apprenticeship and all that kind of stuff. And he'd done a lot of gold leaf work. So this man wanted a 30-foot diameter across this hallway dome. He had a big dome in the hallway of this very grand house he was building. Mm-hmm. And he wanted it to have some kind of a design in it, not just plain gold leaf, but he wanted a design in 2 or 3 kinds of metal, gold preferably. So would my husband come and do this? And he said no. So he talked to me about it. He said, no, I don't want to go there and do that. And I said, look, you had this dream, and it could be this dream is telling you that you do need to go, right? I mean, I enjoyed where we were living in St. George in Utah. It was a pretty place. We had good friends. It's very beautiful. And Kansas, what do I know about Kansas? So, but, I know about dreams.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he said no. Well, a day or so later, Gary phones again and said, listen, I really, really, really want you to come, and I'm going to tell you why. 1, I need this job. I can't do the job without you because I've got to be able to do all this fancy stuff the guy wants. And getting this sort of expert to do it is not easy.
Sure.
right? How many people do you know that can do this kind of stuff? So I have cancer, he said, and I really don't think I'm going to live much longer.
Oh, wow.
And I want this job done, and I want it finished, and I want the money to go to my family. And of course, they were going to get insurance as well, but he said, they'll need something, and I want you to do it. And it'll be a wonderful thing if you do it, but, it'll really help me.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to Temple, well, look, I said, you're going to have to go.
Yeah.
I said, the dream said, you have to leave. I said, we are going to have to leave. I said, let's follow this and see what happens. And it will be an opportunity for you to do something that's most unusual, because it's going to take a lot of money to make this thing happen. The gold is going to cost a lot of money, and so on. And who else, you're never going to get the shot at doing this kind of thing again.
Right.
So we did. We went and did it, and he did a fabulous job, which took several months because it was very complicated. And he came up with a design in two kinds of gold leaf. One is called lemon gold, which is a lighter gold, and the other is a deep gold, like butter, that kind of yellow. And the other it looked like silver, but it was platinum, because that doesn't tarnish. Mm-hmm. And he had to have scaffolding way, way up into this very high dome and climb up it and work on it every day. And he did a very complicated design, which I took photographs of. It was just a fabulous thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last thing that he did on site, because after that he had to have an operation, and he kind of retired from all the big stuff and so on. And Gary did die. He died before the end of the job.
Oh, wow.
But my husband finished off his work and did some other fancy stuff in that house as well, and finished the whole thing. So it was a dream that said there's urgency here.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to leave. You've got to do this thing. And there was urgency in Gary's life.
Sure.
And his asking for help and so on. And it did work out. It was a good thing. And I've always remembered that dream as being not just something from the subconscious, but something that was from the spiritual.
Yeah, ethereal, spiritual.
That's right. It was like, whatever you want to say, God or spirit or whatever was saying, be prepared. There is something coming here that you have to do in such a way that it may be at first scary, but you've got to do it.
You got to do it. And I have an observation here pertaining to these dreams that we have now and biblical dreams. But first, you had mentioned the hats, Napoleonic. Was there a French influence to the dome? I mean, I'm wondering what that connection was.
I wondered about that for a long time. I kept thinking, why the heck did they have these funny hats on? And I remembered that when we lived in England, my husband then, he was doing his work. He did a lot of fancy work in London for rich and famous people there.
Uh-huh.
And we lived in the north of England. And I taught art and other things in England at high school.
Mm-hmm.
But he got this little shop going, a little boutique for his daughter to run. And I helped at times. And he called it Napoleon's Rag Bag.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I said, why Napoleon? And for some reason, he had a thing about Napoleon. I don't know why. And when he came to Houston to work, he did a designer's house, and this designer was nuts about Napoleon and had Napoleon busts and all sorts of things to do with Napoleon all over the place. Apparently, Napoleon had the bee. Now, here's another weird thing. The bee was part of his crest or something. I can't remember exactly, but I know the bee, which is a great symbol for many things. Obviously, the bee is a very busy thing. It makes beautiful honey. I mean, it's very organized. It has incredible life sort of cycle and so on. But you know what the beehive state is? And you know where that is? That's Utah.
Oh, it
because
is.
It's a beehive state. I don't know what this all had to do with the dream, but he had a thing about Napoleon. So I think that they wore Napoleonic type soldier's hats to connect with him. Perhaps he, in his subconscious, used that to sort of say, this is important, you have to listen to it.
Yeah, something of urgency.
That's right, because anybody in uniform in a dream who's got authority, all right, the police, of course, appear in a dream. That's an authority you pay attention to.
Sure.
A judge, with the robes on and a wig that they would wear in England. Doctors with, stethoscopes around their neck and a white coat. That's a uniform. Those are people you have to pay attention to in real life. And so they appear in dreams as advisors telling you what to do.
Right.
And, of course, my husband had been a Marine, you see. So he was a young man, being a Marine, he was out there told what to do and had a life of discipline and so on, which, by the way, stood well with him all his life. He was very disciplined in things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the soldiers, that was the symbol for pay attention, authority, urgency, and you've got to pay attention. That's how I felt about it.
It's very interesting, and certainly with his physical reaction to the dream, it was something to take note of.
Yes,
this isn't your typical dream.
No, and the number 3 appears twice in it. There are 3 soldiers, and the corners of these hats, there are 3 corners.
Oh.
And 3 is also a very important number. Well, all numbers have some significance. But 3s are the numbers of, we would say, the Trinity, body, mind, soul, that kind of thing. It stands for synthesis. It's an important thing to pay attention to in dreams. There's these little clues that give you like a pointer in what direction you're supposed to go, and it said, It's a spiritual dream here. Pay attention to it. And it's got authority backing it up. So, and you were a Marine, you know about authority and paying attention to it. So that's what happened.
And then you have, the Holy Trinity and the 3 wise men.
Yeah.
And bringing that back to the Bible and Christmas and all of this, I have not read the whole Bible. I've read parts of it, and I studied it in Sunday school. But I know the key points. I know the plot points of the Bible. Greatest story ever told, but I don't know every bit of it. But I do know that there are plenty of prophetic dreams in the Bible. And then there is sort of a disconnect with a lot of folks that don't feel like there is any prophecy now or any prophecy through the dreams. And that doesn't really jibe with me, because I think that God is speaking still. And I feel like there are messages from a great spirit that are here to help us,
Absolutely, yeah. That's perfectly right, Chris. And the thing that I think I've already said was that in all the years that I was with Templey, he never, ever jumped out of bed shouting whatever, he had 3 men in the house or whatever, and ran around the house thinking that they were actually in the house. That was the clincher for me, because I know that the more impressive and intense the feelings a dream gives you, the more you are being pushed into action.
Yeah.
You're being impressed with the message.
Yes.
And so I knew it was a very important dream. And of course, why do we still dream then and have these dreams if prophecy doesn't exist anymore? Of course it exists.
Sure.
There are people throughout history who have had dreams well after the Bible was written. And of course, the Bible wasn't written as a complete book. It was written over a period of thousands of years, a history of the Hebrews and other people around there and so on. And because they were very intense and focused people and recorded stuff, which, is important, we were able to look back and see how much they are very much like us in a way.
That's right. Just
like the people today. We live a different kind of life, but we have dreams. And the dreams tell us, do this, watch out for that. After, just as a matter of finishing that little bit off, when Herod, after he had killed all the children and so on, and he lived quite a while after that, Joseph had a dream when Herod died. Now remember, knowing anything that happened in those days, it took sometimes months for news to get about from one country to another. But Joseph had a dream that Herod had died and that it was safe to take his family back to his home. And he did. And the same kind of dream. It says in the Bible, an angel came in a dream and told Joseph that Herod had died and he could go back home. So, it had a good ending to it. The dream said, it's okay, you can go back now.
Well, it's always interesting to talk to you and, consider the long history of dreams being paid mind to and acted upon. And let's not forget that there's still that pipeline to spirit now.
That's absolutely correct. This pipeline is open to everybody. You don't need to be a prophet to have this kind of a dream. You don't need to think that because you're living what we think of as a normal life that you may not get one of these very intense dreams that tell you to change direction for your own betterment, for your own happiness, that you might meet somebody or change your job or whatever it is that is coming at you, which is what happened to us when we lived in Utah.
Perfect.
And off we went on our journeys.
And off you went on your journey, and we always appreciate you sharing some of that journey with us, and we hope that you share some happy holiday times with your family.
Thank you very much, Chris. I always enjoy talking to you.
It's always great. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we'll see you.
Same to you.
We'll hear you in 2015.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you, dear. Bye-bye.
Reawakening with Chris Mann and Yvonne Ryba is a Rising Action Media production. Copyright 2014 by Chris Mann.